Without a doubt, the single most important skill I've found for improving at anything music related, whether it's playing an instrument or producing a song, is learning to work things out by ear. This one skill helps in almost every area of music and will dramatically improve your ability the more you practice it. So let's go over some simple techniques you can use to start learning how to work things out by ear and no longer have to rely on tabs or software to help you. The first method is really simple. It's about researching more into the playing styles of certain bands you enjoy. If you've never learnt a song by ear before, I'd highly recommend starting with simple material and focusing on bands whose playing style you're somewhat familiar with. For instance, when I started learning by ear, I learnt a lot of songs by my favourite band, the Front Bottoms. By watching various live videos and performances, it was easy to notice that they pretty much always played in standard tuning, mostly relied on simple two-finger power chords, and because their music was largely acoustic based at the time, working out the notes and chords was much easier for my ear to identify.
And yes, we can keep living like this.
Had they been smothered in distortion or layered in really dense mixes, this could have been more challenging at first, so that's also something to keep in mind. This next step is more of a practical way to start identifying notes quickly. I'll be demonstrating this with MIDI, as it's easier to show, but you can take the same framework and apply it to whatever instrument you're most comfortable using. The basic concept is that I'll play a very short burst of audio, and then I'll quickly scroll through the piano roll, note by note, until I think I've identified the correct one. So I'll do a quick demonstration first, then go into a bit more detail on using this technique. I find that doing this in short bursts helps to hyper-focus your mind on being able to find the correct note quicker. If you're struggling with this, what you could instead do is set a loop so that the note plays continuously and then try to match things up that way. If you're unsure whether you've chosen the right note to begin with, it can help to play it over the original recording. You should be able to confirm more easily whether you have or not. Now, this may sound a little abstract, but something I tend to rely on is the vibrations you'll hear when two notes are almost in tune but not quite. If you've ever tuned a guitar by ear, you may have a better idea of what I mean. It can be especially apparent when using harmonics too. I'll play you an example here and see if you can notice how the untuned note kind of rubs or beats with the target note until it's perfectly in tune. If you imagine the out-of-tune note as a squiggly line and the target note as a flat line, then as you bring the two closer in tune, the squiggly line starts to flatten out until it becomes completely straight. That's probably the best visual description I can give. The next technique is to identify the root note of whatever you're listening to. This is especially helpful when trying to pick out one specific part from an entire mix. More often than not, listening to the bass line can provide a useful clue for working out more complex sounds that use multiple notes at once. Even if you're trying to decipher a different instrument in a song, starting with the bass can be very helpful. In simpler songs, the bass often outlines the root notes of the chord progression, making it a great starting point. So let's take the previous method I showed you, but apply this in a full mix context. To build on this, you can use mid-side plugins, such as the free Brainworks Solo plugin, to collapse a mix to mono, which can make low-end elements like the bass easier to identify. Additionally, you can use an EQ to roll off some of the track's high end, helping your ear to focus on the bass's lower frequencies. Don't go too extreme, as the higher frequencies help make the notes more distinguishable, but this technique can sometimes make it easier to focus your ear in one specific range. Assuming you've identified the bass note, you can now use it to build out the rest of the chords. Using that mid-side plugin from earlier, you can do the inverse and solo just the sides of the mix, making it easier to hear the elements panned outwards. More often than not, these will include the rhythm guitars, so this is a useful way to somewhat isolate the sounds you're trying to work out. From here, it's simply a matter of repeating the same process for each note you can hear. If the song uses more complex chords, you'll likely be able to identify the key chord tones for certain types first. For instance, if you play a D major bar chord, you'll probably identify the root and third first. From there, you can kind of fill in the gaps with what would logically be played, such as the octave of the root, the fifth, and so on. Over time, you'll find it's easier to hear each note clearly, but in the beginning, focus on identifying the most prominent chord tones and build from those. Keep in mind that this is a skill that takes a lot of time to develop, so don't get discouraged if you struggle at first. Regular practice is key. Even simple exercises like playing random MIDI notes and matching them by ear can make a big difference. Try to fit in a few short practice sessions each day, and you'll gradually improve. Identifying chord types is even easier when you have a larger chord vocabulary to pull from, so check out this video next to dive into the distinctive chords commonly used in Japanese and emo music.